Welcome back, everyone. It is a Sunday, very early morning where I am on the East Coast. It is 12:06 in the morning. It is 11:06 in Kansas City, where I'm joined by Justin Horniker, and it is, I think, 10:06 in Salt Lake City. They've got to be Mountain Time, right?
Yeah, that's how Mountain
Um,
Time works, right? There's that
right.
weird couple of days where Mountain Time doesn't catch up, or is that just
Uh-huh.
Arizona? I don't know.
I don't
I'll
know, but
Royal Riot guys get back to me on that one and let me
it's a
know.
miracle that Salt Lake City acknowledges any terrestrial time zone at all. It's 10:06. I was correct.
Okay,
Salt Lake
cool,
City,
cool,
by
cool.
the way, a beautiful city, just an incredibly beautiful location, but not a beautiful game of soccer there today for Real Salt Lake, as we will get into. But before we do that, Justin, it's a late Saturday night where you are. How are you
Mm,
doing? How's your weekend going? How you
I'm doing
feeling? How
good.
are the
It's going
vibes?
great. Had a long day of watching soccer today, which I always appreciate with the NWSL kicking off today. So
Uh-huh.
it was good. It's been a good day out here.
What are your expectations for NWSL? What are you looking forward to? Talk to us about that sport.
Just the
Well, it's
chaos.
it's the same sport,
It's the
but you know
same,
what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Talk to us about that sport. There's a lot of really good young players in the league this year who are, starting to make their debut or make their jump, and that's really exciting if you're a neutral soccer fan. They're
Which, of course, you
they had two
are.
games today. The rest of the games are tomorrow. So in your today, as you're listening to this, I guess.
Now, you're an esteemed reporter for the NWSL,
Yeah,
specifically the KC Current, as I understand. Are you beholden to maintain impartiality in all things, or do you get to openly cheer for KC Current?
I
How
think
does that go?
because I'm not credentialed necessarily, so I can still cheer for them.
You can talk to people though in an official capacity. You
Yeah,
know what
yeah,
I'm saying?
I get
That's
what you're saying.
credentialed enough for me.
Mm,
I don't get to do that. Ian doesn't get to do that. Ian's
mm.
not even here today. He
Right, we
has
don't even let him on the pod anymore.
yeah, he has a severe case of ringworm, just devastating case of
You hate to
ringworm.
hear it. You hate to hear it.
You hate to hear it, but honestly, when you live life the way Ian does,
Mm.
it's not a surprise. You know what I'm saying? So, Ian, get better soon, but
Hey,
maybe
we're
cut it.
we're cheering for you. We're thinking about you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I have no idea what causes ringworm, so I was going to make a joke about, maybe cut out the whatever and
I know
you know
we had a ringworm problem at St. Mary's Wrestling Gym once upon a time, so I think it's like damp conditions,
stop
I believe.
stop sweating on other men. How many times do I have to tell you this? Um, Beautiful, incredible. So let's dive into what we're here to talk about tonight, which is a 4-0 dominant
Just
victory over
destruction,
by
dismantling.
St. Louis City SC over Real Salt Lake in uh what is it called? America First, America
Yeah,
First
not to
Country
be
America Park.
confused with the nationalistic slogan. It's the credit union, actually, that just
Ah,
so
okay.
happened to have that unfortunate name.
Well, uh I love America, so
Yeah,
go ahead
what's
and be
unfortunate? What's
first. I
unfortunate
say
about that?
that's right. Do you
Yeah,
hate the red? These colors don't run you, Justin.
I don't.
But it was a bludgeoning. It was a second half bludgeoning. It certainly didn't start out as a bludgeoning, and I think we'll have to talk about that once we get the initial reactions out of the way. But overall vibes after a 4-goal night, a goal from Nicholas Giacchini that became the game winner, 2 goals from our dear yeah, I can't speak, towering friend Klaus, and a fourth goal from Rasmus Alm, correct? Is that who the fourth goal came from?
Yeah, Rasmus
Um,
Alm getting in the mix.
Almost something, I didn't,
You'll
it
get
was an
there.
Alm joke.
Hey, it's still early in
Um,
the season. We got
that's right.
time.
That's right.
His
But
first goal.
what's the vibe check? How are you feeling? It's 5 wins. We have not only made history for an expansion club, we have built on that history. How are you feeling right now?
Feeling good. It's hard to look at this game as anything other than like a positive outcome and a result like this on the road where you just kind of squeeze the life out of them throughout the second half. Like it's hard to not feel extremely confident after a game like this. And like RSL might not be a great team, and like outside of Austin, the teams that we've beaten so far might not be great teams, as I always say. But like it's hard
Mm-hmm.
to really see any faults of this. They're now since they let up that goal in the third period of Portland, they haven't let up a goal in the next 2+ games. So like defensively, they've been just incredible.
Yeah, they've looked really good defensively. And Klaus looks really good. Obviously, one of his 2 goals was once again an inexplicable gift. I don't know why people think that this man
when you watch that back too, it's like the guy is trying to pass to the other side of the field on the ground where Klaus is like directly standing in the point right between the two. So how do you not see this large man standing directly in the center of your field of view? I don't get it.
It's a fair question. And this is a man who's second in the MLS Golden Boot race. Do you know who's number 1 right now, Justin?
Was that my boy J-Mo Smooth? Did he move up into first place with his 4 goals tonight?
It is, of course, Jordan Morris of the Seattle, I almost said Kraken, Sounders. But yeah, I don't know why they feel the need to keep gifting Klaus goals. It should be, as the commentator tried to say today, it should be Klaus giving the gifts. As his name would suggest. But
yeah, that's the pun to go off with that one.
Yeah, that joke fell on deaf ears. He won't get a gift for Christmas. But in any case, but he looked great. He played fantastic. His goal off the volley was beautiful. The set piece goal by Gioacchini was also very, very, very nice, very clean. Exactly what you want from a corner kick like that. And came at a time when I think there was a lot still to be played for. Obviously, it was a tie game. It was no score at that point. So that, of course, goes without saying. But as I mentioned and alluded to, I don't think we dominated in the first half. In fact, I would say that it was at best even and potentially a little worse than that in the first half of the game. I think Real Salt Lake had the better of the chances. Berkey made a couple of huge saves. That goal came early in the second. And from there, for whatever reason, the wheels just fell off for Real Salt Lake. And Klaus got his beautiful goal. And after that, it was just, we could have scored 100, I think.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have never heard a stadium with people in it quieter than that stadium was towards the end of this game. I mean, I realized there weren't a lot of people and it was miserable, and all the credit in the world to the people who were there and stayed there. But my God, the expression "you could hear a pin drop" is obviously hyperbole, but I believe it in that game tonight.
Yeah, I think they're pretty
drop.
frustrated that they with the team in general, and they thought that getting some reinforcements that it would be a much better showing. And you look at the first half, and there were reasons for Salt Lake to be kind of encouraged if you're a Salt Lake fan after that first half, and then to have all the life just ripped out of you over the course of the next 30 minutes is, I think, a bit gutting, and it makes you wonder if it was worth going to a game in 9 degrees to watch that.
I would say probably not, would be my guess, but I'll let everyone else make up their mind on that.
Right. It would have been great for me as a St. Louisan, but
yeah, I mean, I still wouldn't have been all that great. It wasn't.
No,
it was I'm
still partially frozen from last week's St. Louis game, so.
It was so brutal that it was almost, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot of fun to watch, but it almost felt like it wasn't fun to watch,
Yeah, what I will say, to hammer home the Klaus point, it felt like that in this 4-4-2 that Gioacchini and Klaus are finally starting to understand where each other are going, and I feel like that's important because Klaus is a little bit unorthodox, and so is Gioacchini really with his run. So it's nice to see that understanding start to come together as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, those players have been obviously instrumental. I think Gioacchini, as much as Klaus gets all the credit and Löwen doesn't get all the credit and probably deserves a lot more than he got or than he gets, but I think Gioacchini has been, quietly arguably the MVP of the season for us, and just in terms of kind of coming out of nowhere and doing what he's doing and doing it so well. And, it's great too. It's exciting because now he's kind of working his way back into Team USA contention and that sort of thing. And that's cool to see with a US squad that has a lot going on right now, which maybe we'll talk about towards the end of the episode. But I think it's just exciting to see him maturing and developing. Talk to me about what you see in his game so far.
Yeah, I think he's just confident. I talked or asked Cardinal about it for an article that I'm working on for St. Louis Mag for later this month. But like, I asked him
Flex.
why. Yeah, that was that nice plug. Was that sweet? I asked him why like Giocchini was fitting in so well, like in Orlando, and it was a short stint, obviously. And like you're coming into a well-established team and trying to work your way into fitness, but like it just wasn't working, and it made you wonder like, what is this guy? Especially with how
Mhm.
things ended at Montpellier. But like seeing him fit into the system, and Carnell was just talking at length about how Giocchini has like such a big engine and empties his tank and just goes and goes and goes and has quality to finish things off. And you hear that and it just sounds like the perfect player for this system. And it's
Yeah.
paying off. 2 goals in the last 2 games.
And I think perfect player for this system describes pretty much everyone on the team through
Yeah.
5 games. I
Yeah.
mean, we talked about it, and I think that was the narrative a lot about this team going into the season, is that, hey, they're obviously building for a system. They're obviously very particular with the players they've chosen. I think the general assumption, though, was that there just wasn't enough talent there to keep up. And I think that comes in part from vastly underestimating the two DPs that we have, who've been fantastic
Yeah.
and huge difference makers. And then those role guys like Giocchini probably being the most notable among them, are playing a huge role for this team, and they really have made that system succeed. And now we've got 5 wins in a row, and you could argue each one has been more dominant and cohesive than the one before it.
Yeah. And I think like to thinking back on those conversations, like a lot of the talk was that it was like a USL team with a couple DPs, but like they did a lot of work during the expansion draft. So Vasilev, Giocchini, Stroud all started this game, all had huge impacts, honestly. Nerwinski was a
Mhm.
guy they signed on a free after leaving Vancouver. Like the trade for Parker, of course. They did well in acquiring that MLS talent after they brought in all the international guys, and I think that kind of goes under the radar because everyone had like made up their mind with how we were building the team before that.
Yeah.
And then
And
you
I
hit so
think,
well with Giochini and Vasilev for sure.
yeah, I think it's important too to remind that one of the players that was assumed to be a pretty big part of the team, and Jabila Blom, has not been much of a factor yet. And I thought he was great in the games he's appeared in. But with all the issues with South Africa and his health and
Yeah.
everything,
But
he
yeah, we
has
played at
yet.
the end of this game and he started
Yeah,
full training, so I think he's back. But yeah, it's
yeah,
been a slower integration than he would have maybe liked.
exactly. But I think that just points to the fact that that's one of the players coming into the season that the analysts probably would have looked to and said, okay, this guy does have some talent, is kind of a big deal, is a good get for them, especially not requiring the DP slot. And he has not been a major part of these last 3 games, especially. So I think it's pretty exciting. I think we, have every reason to think we can win our next game at least. And then the big test will be Seattle, which, I think is as good as we feel about this team. We're still probably not feeling great about that particular matchup.
No, I'm not feeling great about it. I'm feeling
But
worse than I was ahead of this week. That
right,
level of
but
anxiety.
at the same time, like, so what?
Yeah.
If we get
Yeah.
there, even if we lose this week and lose that week, we would have taken a 4-2 start or a 5-2
5 and
start.
2. You're just banking points at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think that refrain that the announcers had, that they said 58,349 times in the second half of, I think we can remove the expansion tag at this point and just talk
I do
about.
have an idea. We should ban all Apple TV commentators from mentioning the word expansion after like the 25th minute. I think that should be a league-wide rule.
I'm good with that. But
who's this for?
They kept saying it, and there is the irony of, well, then stop saying it if you want to stop saying it. But we set the record for the expansion franchise. That is cool. That is inarguably cool. But now we've surpassed that and expanded upon it. And I do think, while we should still think of this in the metric of the success of an expansion franchise and in the race to humiliate and shame the city of Cincinnati and all those sorts of things.
Steven, do we have an update graphic? Have we worked on
I
that?
haven't done it yet.
Department?
I will work on it. Our graphics department is severely underpaid, and they are on strike until I do the job for them. I'm the greatest cat there's ever been, but with all that said, like, I don't think we can divorce the success of this team from its being an expansion team and that being a big deal. With that said, this is just an amazing start for any team, and it's the best start in the league this year by far. And that is, joke about the announcers or not, it is kind of time to think about that we are sitting on 15 points at the end of March,
Yeah, I think at the very least, like, playoffs should be an expectation now. Like, with how wide open the playoff field is, I don't feel like that's too much of a reach. I went out on a limb and I said, when the Utah folk had me on their podcast, that I think that this is probably like a 4th or 5th ranked team. Like, I would put them on that like FC Dallas scale, like underneath the Seattles and LAFCs of the West. Like, I think there's such a big gap in between those top two anyway, that this team should be in that conversation.
Well, at this point, if you were trying to make an argument against this team, it would be hard to find a really consistent narrative, not for why they're not this good. I mean, anybody could paint that picture. Nobody's this good, but like, for why they should actually be just a terrible team or a non-playoff team, or like what you maybe point to the defense, but the defense has 2 pretty convincing clean sheets in a row. And like, there's some youth and uncertainty there. There's no real star power, but like,
it would have to be like,
when is there ever star power in a MLS defense?
It would have to be that we had to swap out like 8 of our 11 that usually play, and just like the structure is all messed up, because like the way they set up makes it so that the center backs don't take up that big of a like load in the defense, and like that's helpful when you don't necessarily have a lot of confidence in your center backs.
Right. But I just think, and I think Nashville is a great example of a team. Did people know who Walker Zimmerman was before he became like a big star for Nashville? I feel maybe you can correct me if I'm way off base.
No, he was an expansion pickup.
Yeah, his star rose to not only MLS prominence, but then international prominence, at least as far as the U.S. men's national team is concerned.
They love
by being a really good expansion pickup in Nashville. So like, you can argue about how good a player Walker Zimmerman actually is. That's a different argument, but like, he's been good.
He's good. He's good.
Yeah, he's been good for Nashville, and I think you can kind of say the same thing about, maybe Tim Parker, Kyle Hebert. Those aren't guys that you would have come into the season thinking.
Canadian international Kyle Hebert, though. I would have never guessed that before the start of the season.
Right. But like, that's how quickly things change, and that's how big an impact these guys have made. And that's why, Nicholas Gioacchini is suddenly back on the USMNT radar, because not only are there different eyes in charge of USMNT right now, but there's also, he's shown a completely different side of himself and a completely different level of talent that he hadn't shown, at least for several years. He certainly didn't show in Orlando. And I do think that Bradley Carnell deserves a ton of praise for how this team is playing, and has got to be the early contender for whatever they call the MLS Manager of the Year award.
Is it just Manager of the Year? Hold on, let me.
The Jack Adams Award.
Why does that sound? Why don't they have it named after some guy who lived in 1930? That's a good question. Should be doing. It's just called Coach of the Year. How lame.
Yeah, that's
the Siggy Schmid Coach of the Year, but no one calls it the Siggy Schmid.
I call it that. I will only call it that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, he's been obviously fantastic. Lutz deserves a lot of credit for building the team. And they were talking today about on the commentary about how some players just need to feel like they have someone who believes in them. It's a very Ted Lasso vibe kind of moment.
uh,
I know Ted Lasso's a little indie show. You probably haven't heard of it, but um,
I'm like afraid to admit how addicted I am to that show. I don't want people to know
I
how much I like
actually
that show.
haven't watched it, and I need to. I need to watch it, um, but I do. I mean, I think there's some truth to that. I don't. I don't want to make the first hockey comparison of this podcast, but I will. We saw this when the Vegas Golden Knights expanded
Yeah,
several years ago. I was going to say a couple years ago. It's been like half a decade now, more than half a
where
decade.
you're
But
like giving options to players who like were further down the depth chart and now they're
yeah,
actually getting their chance to
they
show
picked
what they
it.
can do.
They picked a couple of young guys who hadn't panned out where they were, but had some hype. They had picked a couple of veterans who bounced around, and they really built that kind of scrappy underdog. We weren't wanted. We didn't have a home. Now we have a home kind of mentality.
We'll rip your
And
fucking head off.
that's right. And they went to the Stanley Cup final that year. And I'm not saying that uh, that City is going to match that success, but I do think there are some parallels there, just about the reality of, this is a team of people who at different places in different parts of their career were kind of given up on or overlooked or pushed aside. And now they're here in this cohesive place. A lot of them have had a huge opportunity to, be here and be part of this community for a long time, rather than just coming in this summer. They talked on the game today about Berkey being here last year and passing up the opportunity to be Bayern's backup, which, by the way, wrong decision. but thank you for making it.
I mean, it's probably a lot more relaxed. Like if Berkey needed a like half a year to not be stressed out every day of his life, I think that's probably
yeah, true. But I just think it's that cool kind of family mentality that is doing a lot for this team, and I think Carnell deserves a lot of credit for that.
Absolutely.
But any thoughts on the coach or his style and how it's informed?
No, I liked
This
how
team.
this was the first time they've gone with back-to-back formation, so they go with the 4-4-2 again. And I think like you almost have to with how well Klaus and Joaquin are working off each other now. But outside of that, like I thought they were smart with how they pressed, especially given the altitude. They have like two subs come on at the 60th minute. That felt like a planned thing. And then they really took control of the game after that. So like even outside of the system that Carnell plays, he's like 5 for 5 on getting these games right too, and the game plan right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is obviously a huge factor in the team's success. And I don't know. I mean, it's 5 games, it's 5 wins. There's not a lot more. We've said a lot more, but there's not a
what
ton
more
more
can
to
we
say
say
than that. But I do think it's just there's not like one miraculous thing that's making this possible. There's not one key player that's just blowing the doors off. Obviously, Klaus has been very good. I think we've talked about all the players that have been very good. But it's just a whole team situation, and it's really cool to see. And I think looking forward to next week, a very winnable game, I would say again.
Yeah.
You have thoughts about that?
Minnesota gave up the tying goal in like the 97th minute of the game tonight. So against Vancouver. So like Minnesota at home, you don't want to look like what you have to be afraid of is that they're looking past not to say that Minnesota is an easier opponent, but looking past Minnesota to the Seattle game, since everyone's going to be hyping that up, and then let Minnesota come to St. Louis and sneak one out. But again, it's another home game. That crowd has been crazy. Yeah, I think it'll be a good game, another fun game, and I would like to beat Minnesota.
I would too. But I feel like we will. I don't know. Like, I mean, I think it is natural that we arrive at the Seattle game. It is just the narrative. I hate to say this, but the narrative should be that we arrive at that game undefeated. And that's
if Minnesota ruins the content, we will be mad.
Yeah.
Exactly. Minnesota actually they haven't lost yet either. They've drawn twice against Red Bull in that snow game, and then tonight against Vancouver at the last minute. But they don't let in a lot of goals. They don't score a lot of goals. Their biggest win being 2-1 over Colorado. They beat Dallas on opening night. So, like, they're a decent team. They could be tough. And, like, if you're looking past them and not taking them seriously enough, which I have no reason to think that that would be the case, but just you can't write it off.
Yeah. Well, I'm not writing it off, but they better win or I will be furious.
For Ian's pride, I think they have to win. That's what they need to realize.
That's right. What do you have any other takeaways from this game or any other thoughts after 5 wins in
No, I think we hit on all my thoughts.
Good.
I don't want to feel overconfident. I think that's like I just feel so self-conscious about being overconfident about things. That's the Blues fan in me. And I don't want to say things are going too well, but things are going pretty well.
Yeah, I would say so. And speaking of situations where things seem to be going pretty well, before we sign off tonight, this is obviously going to be a shorter episode. Let's talk about a gentleman by the name of Folarin Balogun. I'm not completely comfortable saying his name, but I think I did fairly well. Folarin Jerry Balogun, by the way, which is just fantastic.
What an American middle name. We love it.
Right. It's crazy to me how quickly this has gone from I don't think there's a chance he gets lured away by the US to it looks like he might be lured away by the US.
Well, I think what this is, I think it's less about that we lured him away, and it's more about Gareth Southgate just fumbling the bag on him because he called him into the U21s and he is like the second leading scorer in League One, and he took that very personally.
Exactly. Classic Michael Jordan vibes. But I mean, I think it's that, but I also you can't underestimate the power of getting to be the man on a team. And
go into Orlando Magic
as
games,
good as he is,
right?
And how could that not seal the deal? Getting a personalized Orlando Magic jersey. There have been bigger deals sealed than that. That's
I also like. So he went to a Magic's game and a Tampa Bay Rays game, and the Magic had him wear the jersey, but at the Rays game, he got a signed Yankees jersey with his letter, which I thought was great.
That's how they ended the Cuban Missile Crisis. You know,
gave him a Yankees jersey.
JFK sent an Orlando Magic jersey.
Oh, had Castro on the back,
and Raul got one too. Yeah.
What do you think his number was?
Good question. I was trying to think of a good Cuban number, but I didn't have it.
That's okay. We don't have to reach that far.
But for anyone who isn't initiated, which I doubt is many people listening to this podcast, but what should we know about Folarin Balogun, and why is it a big deal that he seems to be very likely potentially switching to the USMNT?
Yeah, well, it's a guy who has a higher profile than really like anyone outside of Gio Reyna has for this team. And,
maybe Pulisic,
maybe Pulisic, but like as like a higher at the peak, like I think Pulisic is getting there, but like, and he's an Arsenal Academy player. There were people down on him because he went on loan last year for half the season and didn't play well in the championship, but Arsenal loaned him out again to Ligue 1, to Rennes, and he becomes the third highest scorer in Ligue 1 right now. And he just like has hit another level in his game.
As a 21-year-old.
Yeah, as a 21-year-old, he's set age group records throughout the England youth national team. So like he's been a instrumental player in their national teams all the way up the pyramid, but he can't break through the national team because I think Gareth Southgate would rather bring in Jamie Vardy for the 1,000,000th time. I don't know why you don't bring that guy into your national team when like all England has at striker is Harry Kane, really. But he's a physical, quick striker. The knocks are on him or that like maybe he's not technical enough, but like compared to like if you compare him to Pepe, and Pepe of course still only 19 and he could like be at Balogun's place in a couple of years. We never know. But he's a couple of years ahead of Pepe on the development curve, and I think it just has a higher ceiling. Just with his size and his speed as well. He's a very quick player. But like if you look at what this team is missing, it's a quick, dynamic striker that can make things on his own. And for as good as like Jesus Ferreira is at certain moments, he's just not that like target striker that Balogun is. He's like if
Right.
you gave DK a little more like flair and technique.
Yeah, and I think that's where you really, you kind of hit the nail on the head of why this is a big deal. It's not just that he's a good young player that, could fit very well into that age group of the players that
Mm,
we have coming up. It's really that he is exactly the player we need.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you couldn't build from the ground up a player that fits the USMNT's most desperate need, what they missed the most in this World Cup run, and what they need desperately going forward, better than Balogun is. And I think that has to be a major factor in why the recruiting process is so appealing for him, because I mean, I think the going logic is, well, obviously, if you're confident you can be a star in either the English or US national team,
Mm,
you're probably going to choose to stay with
yeah.
England, especially if that's the team that you already have spent your career with, which, he's,
I'm still flabbergasted seeing like England fans kind of freaking out about it. Like
yeah,
that is odd to me. That tells you
yeah,
you've done something.
good. Yeah. But the flip side of the point I'm, trying to make is like, yes, I would agree with that. But first of all, as good as he looks, as good as his profile looks, as much as above
Mm,
his peers as he might look, you can never be sure that you're going to have a place in the England national team,
yeah.
because there's a ton of talent, and a bad run of form could lose you a job. And Harry Kane doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and X, Y, and Z and all that sort of stuff. But also just the certainty that you will be the man, the number 9 for the US, and having that knowledge heading into a cycle where you will get to play in the US for the
It is
World
kind of
Cup,
crazy going
and you're
from like
guaranteed qualification for the next World Cup, although who isn't for the next World Cup, which
right.
is another topic we haven't really talked about
It's
on
not
this
like England's going to
podcast.
be
But
struggling. Yeah.
yeah,
It's got to be
exactly.
so weird as a 21-year-old to go from like questioning whether or not you're going to be able to like ever get into the national team to all of a sudden like going on one trip to the US and being like treated like a superstar. Like that's got to be such
Yeah.
a amazing feeling for a guy.
Yeah, and you would think that would be a
We did good. We
convincing.
put on the press. You know, he's feeling it.
That's right.
The rumor from the boots on the ground is that he has like soft committed. I think they said that they wanted to get him in to be around the camp to kind of see how things were done and give him like that soft introduction. And then by the next Nations League window, he would be essentially playing for the US unless things change. But it doesn't seem like it because Southgate
Yeah,
had
Southgate's comments today.
some comments today that I don't think are going to go over too well.
Do you have those in front of you, or should I look them up? I can find them real
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah. If you want to find him real
Um,
quick, but
but they
essentially,
certainly were pretty dour and pretty,
yeah,
he's not bigger than the team and that sort of thing. And
or
um,
like I don't know. I feel like if you have a young phenom who like desperately wants to play national team soccer and you know he's going to be a future of this program, because like he even said in it, I
uh,
believe in that statement that like Balogun has a future with the English national team, but like
yeah,
obviously not if he's in a way where he's like publicly asking for national team time.
yeah. So Balogun pulled out of the U21 team due to injury,
Hmm.
or at least,
Injury that can only
supposedly
be
due to injury.
solved by Orlando's son
Right, that's
is
right. And he made an Instagram post saying, "In life, go where you are appreciated," which certainly seems to point to
yeah.
going to a different team. He is, just behind a little guy, a little unknown indie player named Kylian Mbappe,
Mm.
who, and the scoring title. And Southgate here says it is up to a player to weigh up where his heart feels. Is he prepared to wait a little bit for an opportunity if he backs himself and feels he can push his way into our squad?
No,
Because
he's not
anybody who
prepared for
has
that.
followed us will know that we will give young players a chance. So we cannot go and give first team call ups to someone just because we don't want them to go somewhere else. We like Flo. He has obviously not had an opportunity in the Premier League yet. So we have to weigh up those goals to Ivan Toney, for example, or Ollie Watkins, or Eddie Katia, who has done really well with the opportunities he has had at Arsenal. I know there are going to be offers, as 80% of our players can play for more than one country now, and we are not arrogant expecting everybody to want to come to play for England. We have to make them feel wanted.
That sounds
and
like a not
feel
arrogant
a
statement.
part of it. Ultimately, it does not matter what you say. If you cannot give them the opportunity now, then some people are patient and want to see it through and are prepared to wait a bit, and others want it now, and I can totally understand that. That sounds like the talk of a man who already knows he is defeated.
Yeah. Totally not arrogant. Totally understand that, he says as he cries into his pillow at night.
Yeah.
Gary Southgate does look like a man who takes a sad nap.
Yeah, and this is another quote that will certainly rankle Balogun further if he wasn't already sufficiently rankled. Talking about making a special effort to keep him, he said, "I haven't yet because to this point he has been with the U21s. I'm very happy. Clearly other nations have been quite aggressive in their recruitment and what they are offering. That, in my experience of history, has been really successful for the players and sometimes hasn't worked out. Countries cap players at 16 or 17 and they disappear. In the end, as a player, I think you back yourself, but you have to ultimately make the decision. We would like him to give it some time, and if he is progressing the way he is and continues that progression, there will be opportunities for him, but I cannot offer him that this week. I think if we did, I don't think that would be fair on Ivan Toney, who has scored the goals he has in the Premier League." Now, there's some obvious just straight up preference for Premier League accomplishment there, which doesn't really mean anything. But I mean, I think the very fact that he's able to name 2 or 3 guys that could contend with Balogun for this job that are around his age group long term is exactly one of the reasons that Balogun would choose the US if he can,
Right.
and that's a soccer nation on the rise. We have talked about that plenty, and they get to host the next World Cup. There's a lot of compelling reasons to make that switch. And if you're wanted there and you get an opportunity there immediately, why wouldn't you take that? I don't know.
Yeah, you get a chance for like the entire attack to kind of be built around you too.
Right. And I think the one kind of unique and cool thing here is that he's committing at a time when the identity of the team is not very clear because we don't have our next manager. Now, there's a lot of rumors about who that might be. And I would think an Arsenal striker might be pretty interested in one of the widely rumored candidates for that job becoming his next head coach internationally. Of course, I'm mentioning or referencing the Thierry Henry rumors, which haven't died away, I don't think.
I do wonder how much of that, just because of how like openly Henry is posturing for it, like how much of a dialogue they've had. Because I know they talk, like they've talked in interviews and stuff.
I would think that'd be a huge deal. How could it not be? He's a legend. Not only is he just one of the best soccer players of all time and one of the best goal scorers of all time, he is also a legend for the club that you are trying to break through with, so like how could that not have an incredibly massive impact? And on top of that, he's also from the country that you're currently playing your league games in, so obviously he's a guy that you're going to idolize and want to be around. And if
I think Henry,
signing Thierry Henry as our coach comes with the side benefit of
is it worth it?
Folarin, I mean, I think it is. I don't know. I mean, I think, is he the best tactical manager? Maybe not. But does he have more cachet than literally anyone else that we could sign? I think so,
I'd be willing to try.
God forbid it's Jose Mourinho. So,
Yeah, and it gets away from like the insular US soccer stuff that's gotten us in trouble. Like, I don't know, Claudio Reyna isn't threatening Thierry Henry. Right. I think. I'm pretty sure.
That seems pretty likely. And I mean, I think having just a superstar coach that was a player gives these players who want to be superstars a very different perspective than Greg Berhalter.
Yeah, I think you've turned me on this, Stephen. I wasn't sold on Henry, but you're getting me there.
It's, again, I'm not saying he's the best, the number one possibility, it better than like if Jurgen Klopp wanted to be USMNT coach or whoever, but like I can't complain about it too much. I think it's a bold, it's a bold hire. Like you said, it's not just doing the USMNT. Oh, this guy coached in MLS, so he knows what it takes to win in the US. Like it's a different vibe.
Mhm.
Now, seeing Thierry Henry have bags of piss thrown at him in a game in the Dominican Republic, that I cannot wait for. Maybe that stops. Maybe they hold Thierry Henry in such high regard that it just ceases to happen. Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time to be a USMNT fan, as it has been for a long time now. I think, to their credit, I think that the Berhalter Reina stuff has been handled about as well as it could have been handled.
Yeah, they almost benefit from it being like interim guy Anthony Hudson. That's kind of like the players coach anyway. I feel like.
Yeah, definitely true, and I think they got a big benefit out of Berhalter just having his contract expire anyway, because then they didn't have to make a decision between firing him or sticking.
It could have been so much more messy than it actually was.
For sure.
As much of a mess as it already was.
Right. But yeah, hopefully Balogun does commit officially, and that will be a huge win, and I think pretty much set our squad, obviously not on the perimeters, but in terms of who the stars and central players are for that team going forward. He will be kind of the crown jewel in that, alongside Gio Reyna and Pulisic and Yunus Musa.
And De La Torre is getting better and better too.
Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of talent. It's really exciting. We should do another USMNT deep dive before long. But today was mostly about Klaus, but it felt timely to talk about our friend Flo.
Yeah. And they won 7-1 yesterday, so it's a good time to feel optimistic about so many teams scoring so many goals.
That's right. Klaus and Flo are two friends. Anything else you want to say about soccer, about the world, about life, Justin?
Well, I will say that Christian Pulisic looked good last night, which was refreshing. But
very refreshing.
That's what my life is. My life is thinking about soccer now.
My life is thinking about Christian Pulisic. Hershey, Pennsylvania's own. You might be interested to learn.
I have heard that, yes.
That's right. All right. Well, that is it then. That's a shorter episode for a late evening. It would be cool to have a game start at like 6:30 Central.
Yeah, these West Coast. That's why I hate being in the West. I wish we were in the East where you could have like 6:05 start times. It'd be great.
Oh, baby, I'd be into that. But it's worth staying up for this team. They're so fun to watch. I've never fallen in love with a team so quickly. And
they are very easy exciting to just. I don't know. I think it's because they play like such 110% all the time that you. It's contagious when you watch.
They wear on a team.
Yeah,
and they've done it consistently now, and I hope they will do it again against the Loons in a couple of days' time. I am
beautiful birds, not as
beautiful
good
jerseys.
Beautiful jerseys,
not as good as the soccer team. Yeah. If we beat them, I will feel less bad about buying one of those jerseys, though. So
I think you have to, bet on yourself, Steven.
That's right. Bet on myself, bet on Klaus, and bet on Folarin Balogun. So that's it. I appreciate all of you for listening, as I'm sure does Justin. Ian, take lots of whatever you take to get rid of ringworm. Probably
stop wrestling with Jeff in the basement. We've told you guys to not get off. All right.
How do you treat ringworm? Don't show me any pictures.
I'm sure it's just like cream of some sort.
Non-prescription antifungal creams. Wow.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
good for you. 2 to 4 weeks. Well, he might miss a few more episodes, but
just a lot of itching.
That's right.
On that note,
with that said, let's go ahead and sign off here, everybody. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this wonderful defeat of Real Salt Lake. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and goodbye.
Adios.